Welcome to Mineral Talks Live, the monthly live mineral webinar that brings you in-depth and in-person interviews with mineral people from around the world. Mineral Talks Live is brought to you by a joint effort among the Mineralogical and Geological Museum at Harvard University, the SMMP, and Blue Cap Productions. Tune in on the first Wednesday of every month and stay connected to your mineral world. Now, broadcasting live from beautiful Honolulu, Hawaii, the land of aloha, ukuleles, and shakas, this is Mineral Talks Live. Happy August, everyone. I hope you're doing your best to keep cool out there because I know for a bunch of you, it's a really hot summer this year. But hey, now you're here for the coolest mineral talk show on the internet, and that, of course, is Mineral Talks Live. Today is Wednesday, August 2nd, 2023, and I want to welcome you to our show. For those of you tuning in for the first time, I'm your host, Brian Swoboda, and I, along with my two angelic partners, Dr. Raquel Alonso Perez and Dr. Eloise Gayu, want to thank you for joining us today. Mineral Talks Live is a monthly mineral talk show where we talk with some of the best curators, curatrix, collectors, dealers, miners, researchers, artists, and media people in the mineral world. We broadcast live the first Wednesday of every month, and as a majority female-owned project in the mineral collecting world, we are absolutely thrilled you're able to tune in to our program. If you happen to have missed any of the past interviews, there's a complete list of those episodes, along with links to those interviews at the URL located at the bottom of the screen. Now, one of the things that makes this program unique is that not only is this a live show, but it's a show where you get to interact with our guests. All you have to do is participate through the chat or the Q&A features, both of which are located at the bottom of your Zoom window. The chat feature allows you to type messages to everyone watching the live show. We encourage you to post your thoughts, comments, or questions about what we're discussing in this chat area while we're talking. Raquel, who is normally based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, is on leave today, so Eloise, coming to you live from Paris, France. We'll be monitoring the chat area and we'll be very active there. Occasionally, Elo may even interject a question or comment to us in the interview that she's received from the chat area, so don't be shy. As for any general questions you may have for our guests, those questions can be typed into the Q&A section, and we'll get to those questions at the end of the show. Finally, towards the end of the program, you'll see a window pop up on your screen. This is our quick fire 5 questions segment to see how well all of us know our guests. We find it's also a fun icebreaker when you run into our guests at the next mineral event, so come on, play along. Now, for today's episode, we're going to head over to the Pacific Northwest coast of mainland USA, and we're going to hook up with a longtime friend of mine who is an absolute joy. You've seen him on What's Hot in Tucson, you've seen him at the Dallas Symposium, and you've most likely seen him at Tucson. He makes me kind of want to consider growing a mustache, a full mustache, and he always puts a big smile on my face. The one, the only, Mr. John Cornish. John, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's really a pleasure to be here. I want to thank Brian, Raquel, Eloise. I want to thank the SMMP and everybody there for checking on in today. Hopefully, we're going to have a real fun hour here for you all.
Well, John, if I know anything about you, I know we're going to have a fun hour. So let's get into the interview. Now, John, I've known you for a long time, and you've been featured on What's Hot in Tucson from some of our earliest years. One thing I don't think I ever heard from you is how you first got started in mineral collecting.
Oh, well, thanks for asking, Brian. Yeah, it's kind of a crazy little story in that I'm a late bloomer. I was 29 years old when the mineral bug really hit. I was working for a guy and was invited over to him and his wife's house for a dinner and noticed some quartz crystals on the mantle. And I asked what the funny things made out of plastic were.
No way.
I'd never seen a quartz crystal before, or any types of minerals for that matter. And so once we found on out, started asking some questions of them, they told me that these had come from Spruce Ridge, which is a world famous locality here in Washington State for quartz and pyrite. And they were going to go ahead and be going on another field trip soon, and I should come along. And so they told me it would be $50. And I still remember that warm feeling as I took my fists and I put them into my armpits and I said, $50 for a rock? Couldn't believe it, that people would actually do something like that. Well, when they got back and I saw all the treasures that they'd found, I knew I made a mistake. And so I set myself up to go on the next trip. This was through Bob Jackson and his geology adventures going on up there.
I know Bob quite well. Yeah.
Oh, he was a great talker too, great speaker here on the series. And Bob, for a lot of reasons, is the person while I'm here, because having that exposure to such a phenomenal locality and being able to collect it was magic. So when I went on that first field trip, Bob had made mention to me that I was only the second person in all the years that he'd done those field trips that I made 2 trips up and down the mountain hauling materials. And I told him if he gave me 5 more minutes, I'd have another load and I could do a 3rd trip. But that's when he cut me off. And, at that point, I was in such phenomenal shape that the idea of doing that vertical trail was just a couple of minutes run for me. And so I just swing down on the bottom, come back on up with another load ready to load up. And that's really what pushed me over the edge, not just being exposed to minerals, but to actually be able to find them myself. And that's really what just cemented this love that I have for minerals and fossils and field collecting, was that ability to go out in the field and not just find a treasure, but potentially find a treasure the likes of which nobody had ever seen before. And I love that it's available to everybody. It's not about the amount of money that you make or have. It's just about your willingness to go outside and observe the natural world that surrounds you.
Now, John, I'm going to circle back and come back to the whole field collecting part, because I really want to talk to you about that in depth. But as many people know, you're also a mineral dealer, and you're set up at Mineral City in Tucson and also at the Crown Plaza in Denver. How did you go from being exposed to minerals or field collecting really by Bob Jackson to becoming a full-out mineral dealer? To me, that's always kind of an interesting transition. So share your story with us.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. What we ended up by doing there is, going on out and collecting. And so as I found these treasures, I really did. I started jumping into the literature. I wanted to learn about the things that I was finding. And that's when I found out about the big shows going on in Denver and Tucson. Okay. And so once I had that exposure to those and started reading the reports, I started to get very hungry for the opportunity to go down there myself and be part of the show. So what we ended up by doing there was when I found the mineralogical record, which was like a huge blessing, a huge, fantastic day. I'd seen the advertisements in the magazines, but I'd never seen a copy. So once I was actually able to see the mineralogical record, what it was, I purchased every single back issue that was available and just started devouring the text. And so from there, I was turned on to the Friends of Mineralogy, and we have a Pacific Northwest chapter here. And I was the speaker chair one year for our symposium that we have, and we were doing a theme on the minerals of Mexico. And another great speaker here that you've had on this series was Peter McGaw. Sure. And we had Peter, I contacted him for the opportunity to come on up and to be a speaker at our symposium. And that kind of got us talking a little bit. And he just kind of, it was just an off-cue comment. He says, if I could find somebody crazy enough to sit in my room for 2 weeks, I could actually enjoy Tucson. And so I hung up the phone with him. I thought for about 2 seconds, and then I called him right back and I said, crazy is something I can do. And I'm here and I'm ready to go. So Peter was the first one that actually had me come on down, and I did this for about 5-6 years. I started with Peter and then finished running the Westward Look room for Stuart Walensky. And then at that point, that's when I broke on out in 2003 for the Denver September show. And that was the first time that John Cornish Minerals had a presence at the shows, and the rest is history.
I love it. Okay, so you started with Peter, you closed Walensky's room, or you helped Walensky with his room up at the Westward Look. So this was what, like 2003 or something?
Yeah. Actually, it was. It was 2002, 2003 that I helped out Stuart, again, another guest on this series, and just a really wonderful individual. Ended up by doing that work with him for a couple of years. I also ran security for Westward Look. So for your first couple of years that you guys were down there and you were safe, it's because of the good job I did. But yeah, we've had a lot of fun.
I absolutely love this because I know a lot about you. You and I have been friends for a while, but I've never heard any of these stories.
Well, yeah, once you get me talking, this will probably be a 4-hour presentation here, guys. So
oh my God. Okay, so you work for McGaw, you work for Walensky, you work for Dave Weissman. I love it. And then you started. So I came on the scene in 2007. I don't think you were on the first show, but I know shortly thereafter.
2008.
Correct me if I'm wrong. 2008. Okay, that's
Yep.
what I thought. So that was the second year that I did What's Hot in Tucson, and you've been on so many times. So that is really, really, really cool. So that's your story of being a dealer.
Well, it's great, and I hope it's a story that maybe some of the younger viewers will pay attention to, because a lot of times the established dealers, it's difficult to be in 5 places at once when you're at the shows. And so looking for somebody who's honest, who's knowledgeable, who's personable, these were all positive traits that I was able to share with the different clients that came into these dealers' rooms. And it was just really great. I love Tucson, especially to share the story with people who have not been to Tucson, in that it's such a magical place where every breath that's breathed is a breath that is shared by another mineral enthusiast right next to you. Everybody at the restaurant, everybody in line at the gas station, everybody everywhere is down there, and they're all dealing with the minerals and fossils and different jewels. And I mean, it's just an amazing place. And for everybody who has an interest with this hobby, whatever its facet, you should definitely plan on going down and seeing these big shows and really immersing yourself into the wonderful mineral legacy that is being shared each year as we do these shows.
Yeah, but go as a collector, not as a dealer, because to me, the ultimate irony is you were playing relief dealer for McGaw and Walensky, and by the time I started interviewing you in 2008, I would come around and you'd say, Brian, what have you seen out there? Because I'm so busy, I can't leave my room.
Yeah, that's actually the truth. I mean, you end up by, working with all your friends and finding on out as you network what's new around the show. Because otherwise, stuck in the room, I'd have to wait until the Mineralogical Record would put out their What's New report so that I could see, several months later. So I would definitely work with the friends and the people that would come on in, find a good room that was on out there, and then I'd shut down every once in a while. I would actually shut down and then go on out and visit and see some of the rooms. And I'll tell you what, there's just no experience that compares to going on into a hotel show or the Mineral City shows and walking from different doorway to different doorway to different, and every one of those places is full of fantastic, the beautiful treasures that the earth produces, and they're full of great personalities, the people that are in the room who want to share their fascination and passion.
Yeah. Now, when you started in Denver, you were at the club show. And so I'm guessing that you started in Tucson the following year, which would have been 2004. When I met you in 2008, you were at the Inn Suite. So were you always at the Inn Suites, or did you start somewhere else and then move to the Inn Suites?
Well, the beginning was over there at the Executive Inn. And while unfortunately I never got the opportunity to visit the Desert Inn, I'd certainly heard all the legendary stories. And the Executive Inn was very much like that when I first checked on in. I mean, it was such a fantastic place to be. And so we'd walk around, we'd see the other dealers, we'd talk to them. And then basically we ended up by going on out once the shows changed, executive in, went over to in suites. And then once in suite shut down, that's where we looked out. Thankfully, I was very, very fortunate to work with Rob Levinsky, another guest on this program, and have been doing that the last couple of years, running his wholesale business for him down there. And then finally broke out this year. And we're going to run our own room over there in Mineral City in the D building. We're going to be in D40. And that's what we're going to call our home base here as we move forward into the Tucson years.
That's terrific, because the In Suites was always such a great place because of the diversity of dealers there. And when that closed down, I think a lot of people were wondering, well, what's next? I think Mineral City has really risen up and filled that spot. And so Mineral City is great in terms of the diversity. I'm glad you're over there. You were adjacent. You were across the street over at La Fuente, but now you're going to be in Mineral City proper. So looking forward to seeing you there next year.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a very positive move. I'm very excited about working with Graham on over there at the Mineral City shows. It's certainly become the new mecca for Tucson, the new gathering place for everybody. And I'm just really thankful to be a part of that show.
Absolutely. So, John, let's switch back to field collecting. I told you we're going to come back to this. And so you do a lot of field collecting. You had started with field collecting, and it sounds like you never stopped doing that. And one thing that always struck me about you is your meticulous planning and execution when it comes to field collecting. Once you had that initial exposure from Bob, how did it grow from there? Especially, how did it grow as you were concurrently doing assistance to some of the dealers out there?
Yeah, thank you. It was definitely something that evolved, you know, going on into it and doing the field collecting. Once I'd gone on that first spruce trip, I mean, I was just absolutely sold. I've been doing woods running for a number of years, doing 25, 30-mile runs every day, hiking on up in the Cascades. And I started exploring the old mines that were on up here in Washington, and got hooked up with a group called Northwest Underground Explorations, where we started going into these old mines. And they've now published, I think, 6 or 7 books on Washington's mining history. And so we got to start with them. And that kind of, you know, really threw me into some areas that I would not have gone into, you know, places that did not have trails. And so we started to do a lot of exploration with them. And as I kept working with them, I got tired of the tunnels. I started to become fascinating with the minerals that I was seeing within pockets inside of those tunnels. And so that kind of led to the evolution of going on out and field collecting. On my first or second year, I think it was 117 localities that I did. I basically got a hold of all the field trip guides for here in the Pacific Northwest and ran all those guides out, going to all the different sites. Some of them we did good, some of them we didn't, but it was always an evolution of learning. And, you know, that's kind of where we're at now, where, you know, I enjoy the planning that goes along, the execution that happens as you're able to approach a rock face and then be able to find and extract the minerals that are in it. And I really like a difficult extraction, something that challenges me. So that was, of course, brought to the fore with the work that I did with Adam Wright down there in Tasmania, Australia, for the crocoite mining. Mm-hmm. But we did that here locally, started going on out, visiting a lot of places, meeting some of the other collectors here in the Northwest. I started writing on up some little stories through the Mineral News magazine that Lanny had at that time, and started publishing my first accounts there. But I love the field. I've always enjoyed being outside. The classroom was not something with 4 walls and fluorescent lights. The classroom was something with 1,000 acres of woods. And
Right.
so I would go on out and just try to really pay attention. And, it's a learning process. Nobody's born with the knowledge to pursue these things. But if you pay attention, like I tell the kids in the talks that I do, every single rock is willing to share its story with you if you just take the time to learn. And the more we learn, the more that we're able to approach the field with the idea of not just enjoying a day, but the potential of reading the rock, being able to read the geology that's happening there in front of us, and actually be able to recover crystal pockets. That's where I really blossom and feel my most energized and my most invigorated, is when I can take that blank wall and turn it into magic. So it's definitely a process. I started on out thinking that hammers and chisels were my most important tools. Now my most important tool is my reading glasses. So things change over time. But yeah, we're hitting the field a lot of different places, both for crystals and fossils. And I enjoy just so much the time that I spend on out, that anytime I'm able to find treasure, it's just an absolute bonus on an otherwise magical day.
Okay, but John, your planning and your attention to detail, to me, is something that doesn't come naturally to many people. And so part of me wonders, what training or what influence did you have in your life that kind of brought that to the forefront? Because I mean, you've done some videos for me for the Mineral News Now program, where you give all different kinds of advice on packing material, on packing specimens, on keeping detailed notes in a notebook. Where did that all come from? I know, again, Bob heavily influenced you, but it seems like that kind of training came from somewhere else beyond just trial and error. Or maybe it was, I don't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was just me trying to fill a gap, recognizing that I had the ability to share a story that I wasn't hearing shared by others.
Yeah. And
so much of what I want to do is to make this entire crazy madness, geology, mineralogy, gemology, all these different facets of it, I wanted to make it approachable. That was the whole deal for me, is to just make it something that was approachable. So being able to write and share those experiences, or like you've made mention, thank you, the videos that we've shared, which I've got more that I'm going to do. I'm just trying to fill a hole where so many of my peers, I wish they would share more of their knowledge, because we're all learning. And I think if I can help somebody in that learning curve of theirs as they're coming on to this, avoid maybe some wasted time, some mistakes, if I can do just the tiniest bit to help that person find their path, then that's where it's great. So, Brian, a lot of the work that I did then was just to go ahead and share a story that I wasn't hearing from others. And it wasn't that I was a great ambassador or representative. I was just trying to fill a gap that I perceived, to actually be able to make it more approachable to more people. I mean, it's not brain surgery, it's not rocket science, but you'd be surprised in some of the rock environments that we work in, how difficult an extraction could be. So I've learned basically that these things are fragile. And I'm thinking of some wolfenites that were down at the Rowley mine here several years ago. I was going after a very nice wolfenite pocket, bright orange tabular wolfenites, jammy, gorgeous things on barite crystals. And as I tried to work into that crystal pocket, taking great care, I will always remember that tinkling sound as the wolfenite shattered.
Yep.
And they broke. And that discordant musical note was something that absolutely horrified me. So what I tried to do was take that terrible experience of destroying these specimens that I was going after, and learn from that to the point where, as I work on into it, I can actually feed from those negatives and turn them into positives. So I try to take the time. I try to be very patient in working out the specimens that I'm going after. Like I mentioned earlier, the rock will tell you its story. It'll tell you how it wants to be worked if you just pay attention. And sometimes it may take more effort. It may take several hours, several days. But in the end, if you're able to recover those treasures that you're going after, you've done your job effectively and correct at that point. And that's what I want to try to focus on, is slowing down, paying attention. I keep a meticulous work area. There's not a lot of garbage and broken, shattered rock. It's a very clean place so that I can do the extraction without any hindrance. And I love it. It's been a process. Sometimes I just shared here a little while ago, you'll remember, on Aloha Friday, a great program for those of you listening. Please consider attending the next Aloha Friday that we have. And what we did there is I talked about a beautiful natural light calcite and announcing plate that I was getting ready to collect from a local quarry. And I talked about and showed pictures on how we pedestaled this thing, removing all the rock around it so that we could pop that plate off. And in the end, the rock broke funny. It didn't allow an extraction. But if I learn from a negative and turn it into a positive, I know that the next time I approach the field, I'll go ahead, I'll do things just a little bit differently, and I'll learn from those negatives. And that's the key.
I love it. I love it. John, something that you said in terms of keeping notes and writing things down and not being afraid to share these things struck a chord with me. So I want to read you something that a friend of mine posted on Facebook actually earlier this week, and I think it's very apropos. My friend wrote, "Many people have a book in them, but it takes a special kind of freak to leave the land of laziness, cross the plains of procrastination and insecurity mountain, find the blade of no one made you do this, and use it to cut your chest open and yank that book out." Now, you have such an excellent point. And as far as I know, you don't have any formal geological or mineralogical training.
No, sir.
But you make such an excellent point that you take meticulous notes and you are not afraid to share. And that's one of the reasons I love you so much. It's that you can serve, and you often serve as an inspiration for other people to do things. You don't need to have a degree. You don't need to be a huge big dealer. All you need is the lack of fear to share what you're doing. And you are such a great example of doing that. And I certainly hope that you serve as an inspiration for other people doing the same. If you're out there and you're in the field, take photos, shoot video, start your own YouTube channel, but share that information. It is so, so critical. And you do such an excellent job of that, John.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, it's, go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's such a process. And there's times when by sharing, I absolutely 110%, I shoot myself in the foot in that not everyone who sadly reads these reports or sees these programs is of a decent character. And so
but you're not doing it for other people's approval. You're doing it for that one odd individual out there that might glean some inspiration that may change their lives, just like your life was changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it takes a spokesperson to do that. It takes putting themselves on out there. I've always enjoyed sharing, and what a great thing to be able to share is your passion. And to be able to work with the different age groups. I mean, I've done my lectures to first and second graders, right all the way on up to octogenarians. And, everybody is fascinated about this natural world that surrounds us. There's not a person out there that didn't pick up a rock or maybe a crystal or a fossil and wonder how that thing came to be. and to have the opportunity to learn. We're very fortunate, especially during this awesome golden age of information, that everybody can get that information that they're looking for, whatever the context, and they can bring on out that knowledge with them into the field and maybe slow down, do things a little bit different. Instead of coming from the right, come from the left, and just look at things. Take the time to look at things. And like I say, that the rock, it'll tell you its story. You just need to take the time to listen to it.
Absolutely. John, I've got some photos of your field collecting experience that I want to share with the audience. So let me go ahead and do that. Tell us about some of the images we're looking at here.
Well, this is improving on tools here. We were going on into a quarry here in Central Oregon on this trip, and I've always been frustrated with this photo in that I only showed us going into the pit. I didn't show us coming out. This is a 40-foot ladder, and when we came out, we had the entire top deck of the ladder where you see the 3 boxes there sitting now. The entire deck, the upper deck of the ladder, was covered with boxes, and we also had them strapped onto the bottom of the ladder also. So we were wheeling out between 500 and 1,000 pounds of specimens each time we came from this particular find. This was a 4-inch hole that was noticed by friend Rudy Chernick in a quarry 40 feet up the wall, and he says, that's something you should take a look at. So I went on down there knowing that 4-inch hole was either going to be the end of a pocket or the beginning of a pocket. And we were able to build up a base to where we could plant the ladder safely, climbed on up the ladder and opened up that 4-inch hole. And I've got to tell you, this was an absolutely magical moment. I'm up there, I'm 35 feet up on this ladder now. The ladder's wibbling and wobbling like crazy. And I open up the hole and I can see into the void now. I know that the crystal pocket is ahead of me. And so what I did is I yelled down to my buddy, "Hey man, there's crystals here." And as I turned back, the hard hat I was wearing caught the reflection of the sun, and it sent a beam of light straight into that 6-foot pocket. And when we got to the back wall, the whole back wall of that pocket exploded in golden root beer color. And what that ended up by being was a 40-pound crystal plate of calcite, big 4-inch ROMs, root beer golden colored. And the main ROM on that cluster was 1.5 feet across, foot tall and wide. 40 pounds is what that calcite group weighed. The main ROM on it had a 1-inch bubble that traveled 3 inches across the face. It's one of the largest gas pocket in hydros. I don't know if it was a 2 or 3 phase inclusion, but it was certainly one of the largest I'd ever seen. And in a calcite, I was blown away, because when we took that out of the pocket, out of the darkness, the coolness of the pocket, and took it down to the quarry floor, it was 90 degrees that day while we were down there working. And so at that point, we tried to cover up everything. And I would have thought that with that gas bubble, it would have exploded with the perfect cleavage of calcite. But thankfully, there was enough room in the chamber for the bubble, the gases to expand. And we never ended up by losing that. That plate is now on display at the Rice Northwest Museum of Rocks and Minerals in Hillsboro, Oregon. It was too big to fit in my display cabinet.
That's great. That's incredible. So I love it. Here is a great example of invention being the mother of necessity. I mean, you don't need some special
I'm glad I kept those off my back.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'm going to apologize in advance to the viewers, because the next couple shots are, well, I won't say John's best side, but it is a side that we end up seeing a lot of.
So yeah, there I am on that 40-foot ladder. This was reaching in off the ladder. I have to admit, this was a scary moment for me. At this point, what I really needed to do was actually climb off the ladder and into the crystal pocket. I could see that like a capital letter L that's lying down with a small leg going up. I could see that the pocket continued up above me, but the idea of being so high off the ground and crawling into the rock, it didn't set very well with me. So I actually know that if this pocket is still on the wall there, that there's actually still specimens within it, specimens that I just was too afraid to go after.
Yeah. No, and rightly so. I mean, you're doing this for fun, not to kill yourself. I think these shots are more recent shots, but I wanted to show them in this sequence just to show your commitment to really kind of getting in there.
That's my legs sticking out of a burned out log that had been encapsulated within a tertiary flow. It slowly burned the log out to create an open void. This was just the same width as my shoulder. So this is right on the side of a highway. I actually often thought what the cars must have thought is they were driving by this road cut and they saw my legs sticking out of the wall. But we ended up by putting the tools in front of me and humping the ground, if you will, to go on into this log. I was able to get in about...
This is a family show.
Yeah, thank you. I was able to get about 12 feet in, and right before the root ball, which was just a huge open 5 by 6 foot chamber, I could see the heulandite pocket lining, big root beer rhombic colored calcite crystals going on, but I couldn't get any further in. So at this point, I tried to call all my friends who had young children to see if any of them would rent them to me so that I could send them in the hole.
Okay, that's when the FCC shut this program down.
So that's still waiting there. That's at a locality called Goebel in Oregon, just right off the Columbia River, a real classic area for Oregon zeolite mineralogy, a place that's been dug for almost 80 years.
And if you happen to have a child that you're rather ambivalent about, maybe you can claim this.
If you want some help, I'll split the take with you. I'll show you right where the pocket's at. We'll just send little Tommy or little Sally in. We'll just relax while they're having a good day collecting.
Okay, you people did not hear that here. John, what are we looking at here? I think this is inside of a pocket somewhere.
Oh, yeah. This is a local pit here in Washington. It's a pillow basalt quarry. Every once in a while, the pillows will have gas pocket voids within them. And this is the largest pocket opening that I've been able to yet work and recover specimens from. It was about 3 feet across, about 3 feet back, maybe 1.5 feet tall. The biggest natural light plates that came out of there, I've got 2 large ones. The biggest one, I think, is like 19 by 11 inches. Flowing snowball fields of the bright, bristly natural light crystals, which are not like the mordanite that we get from rat's nest, in that these natural light crystals are like little hypodermic needles. So as an example, we were digging one of these natural light pockets a couple of years ago, and it was huge. Went in about 10 feet. And when you think about all the crystals that came out of a 10-foot cavity, you're right. It was just absolutely phenomenal. But what was really crazy about it was the fact that we had to go on into that pocket with all these stray natural light needles. So I was working in a T-shirt, and when you slide into the pocket, it pulls your T-shirt down. But when you come out, it pulls your T-shirt up, and I ended up by being skewered by hundreds of these natural light needles in my chest and my stomach. And it took about 6 months for the last of the crystals to finally pus themselves out. But when you look at the crystals I found, the sacrifice was meager.
I love it. Reminds me of the story that Jeff Swanger shared with us of all the slivers of the kunzite getting in all the miners' fingers.
Right.
It's the blood cost.
Yeah, and you can't take off you can't wear gloves. You
No.
really need to have that textile to be able to feel.
Exactly. John, you're standing here in this photo. at the top of a ladder holding what looks like a specimen you just pulled out with your Burt Reynolds mustache there. Tell us about this.
Yep, that's actually one of the specimens that came out of that last natural life pocket photo that we just looked at. Here I was about 20, 22, 24 feet up off the ground with the ladders digging this one on out.
Right on. Now, John, I'm gonna jump a little bit to this photo here, and when I look at this photo, I think about safety, and with the exclusion of the ladder photos, I want you to chat a little bit about safety in field collecting.
Yeah, you bet. It's one of the things that we can't not pay attention to. I tell people that I am the soft thing in a very hard equation. I'm going to get hurt before the rocks do. So I really need to pay attention. And this is something that as advanced collectors, we really need to be aware of when we're working with novice individuals. As I've taken individuals into underground environments as an example, it amazes me how many people will look down at their feet while standing beneath a rock that's going to fall on them and kill them. So education, whether it's talking about crystals or cleaning or documenting, one of the really biggest discussions that we need to have is about safety. Everybody has to come home. And this is a thing that I'm unwilling to compromise in any form or fashion. Everybody comes home and everybody comes home safe. So that means that if things start to get a little bit gnarly, a little bit unsafe, I'm going to shut them down just to kind of reset the clock, if you will, to come back and to work forward and to be able to do it in a safe way. So this is in a locality in Montana called the Red Cliff Campground. It's working in the Madison limestone, and here we're digging gold and yellow calcite crystals. So this is a campground. You ask permission of the campground host. He says, go on up there and dig your hearts to your heart's content. We ended up by taking in 100-ton jacks to move some of the boulders out of the way. And what I ended up by finding was a slot in the floor that I took 18 feet underneath the boulder pile, and then found a 5-6 foot open room there that I was able to recover all my very best specimens from. The biggest plate weighed 110 pounds. Wow. But digging in that cave environment was really kind of sketchy in the sense that there had been a bat population years ago. So you had up to a 4-foot pile of bat poo in there. So you were digging around that feces pile. And then we also hit, there was some type of a carnivore that had denned up in there. And as we went underneath the boulders, we ended up by finding this old den with scraps of bones and hair mats and that type of thing. So wearing respirators was really just not something to joke about for any at all. You put the respirators on because of the feces and the airborne dust contaminants. And it's just not something that any of us should be considering is shortcuts when it comes to our personal safety or the safety of others around us. And that's not just the moment, that's after you leave a site too. You don't leave it set and poised to kill the next guy that's coming on up. We have to be conscientious about the work that we do, and we've got to be forward thinking so that at the end of the day, we get to enjoy that end of the day satisfaction of a job well done, enjoying yourself out in the wilderness, which is such an awesome thing. If I don't find anything, the first thing I find is an incredible day away from people outside and in the mountains or down on the beaches, any of these places. And so we need to be safe and, kind of sounding like a broken record here, we cannot compromise in any way our safety or the safety of those that are with us or coming behind us.
Well, what you're saying about the people coming behind us resonates very strongly with me. One of the things that I'm always teaching my kids and I'm bringing up to other people that I find on the beach is if they dig a big hole, there is the potential that the sides of the hole can cave in and bury them. But if they dig a big hole, don't leave the beach with the hole there. Fill it back in, because you don't know what's going to happen to the next person who comes along, sees this big hole, decides to jump in. Now the sides of the wall have dried up even more, which makes it easier to slough in. So good point, John. John, we're going to go ahead and launch the poll. I'm going to ask you to close the pop-up window that shows up on your screen. And in the meantime, we're going to jump down to Mexico, I believe this is, with this absolutely crazy shot of you on a ladder, or a series of ladders. Tell us about this thing.
This was an incredible potential experience that unfortunately did not pan out. We were hired by the American Museum in New York City to go down to Mexico. They were going to be opening, which has now already opened, the new mineral hall there at the American Museum. And we were hired to go down there to look at extraction, both of columnar single crystals that were, up to about 2.5 feet thick and up to about 16 feet long. And that was from the upper cave, which is what this photo is taken from here. This would have been one of the most insane extractions ever in the mineral world, in that we were having to take, the goal was to take 12 and 16 foot long crystals that were suspended downward from the ceiling. We were going to have to rig on up lines to where we could trapeze and bring those things down to the surface. So it was just a gnarly potential extraction that we were looking at here. So this is our first trip into the upper cave. The upper cave was 300 feet long, and then it pinched with another 300-foot segment behind it. And when we went on in, it was horrific. It was absolutely horrific for two reasons. One, it was 140 degrees with 100% humidity. I'd never been in extreme temperatures like that before. You open up the diesel truck door that brought us down to the occurrence, and you'd open up that door, and the first thing you'd want to do is just close the door, because it was like you were getting ready to walk into your oven. Yeah. I mean, it was just unbelievable. So the first cavity that we got on into there, where the photograph is from, it was insane, because there were these beautiful gypsum crystals. This was a gypsum occurrence that we were after. I'm sorry I didn't make mention of that. Yeah, that's the photo, Brian. And this is a pile of gypsum crystals that is about 8 feet by 8 feet as you're looking at it. And this is all crystals that have fallen from the walls and the ceiling as they were deposited. Their weight became too heavy. They broke down and fell. New crystals formed. They broke down and fell. And so we were actually walking across piles of crystals. I mean, you can see in this photograph, there's 1,000, 4,000 crystals that are there, feet thick. Amazing. That's an 8 by 8 foot view. So that was really incredible to go on in and see this occurrence. And then we went and did the lower cave, which is where we were going to extract a 12-foot across by 9-foot tall flower. Yep, this is walking into the lower cave here. It was very clean in comparison to the upper, and it was much more limited in its scope. It was not a big cavernous void. It was much smaller, and it was intensely mineralized by the gypsum crystals that had grown to the point where you had to kind of crawl underneath some of these big flowers in order to see what was on the other side. So we were going to take on out a 12-foot across by 9-foot gypsum flower. And when we were down there, I told the mine management that I needed to have some type of a cool air port put into that void so that I could have a spot that I could cool down in while I was working. Mm-hmm. The unfortunate thing is that the mining company did not supervise the miners and they drilled right through that 9 by 12-foot flower to put in the airline.
No.
It was such a nightmare. The most awesome extractions that we would have ever been involved in were lost that quick, and the recovery never happened. So unfortunately, these types of specimens are not what are going to greet people as they walk into the new American Museum's Hall. So this crystal group we're looking at here, you can see a blade kind of in the center of the photo left. That blade there sticking out is about 3 or 4 feet long on this one.
This blade here.
That's it right there. Yeah. So this is a huge flower growing up on the wall. And we were able to get on in and look at this. Being that I was going to be the one who was going to be the extractor, I went on in deeper than anybody else and was able to just really be flat amazed at this geologic treasure chest that was opened before me. It was such a phenomenal experience. And then when you deal with those temperature extremes on top of it, you're talking with a lifetime memory here. And I feel so satisfied. Yeah, these are the big columnar crystals here. You can see each of those examples there are about 12 feet long, about 2 feet wide. And then the gypsum crystals that you see behind that, it's a forest of gypsum crystals. Those are all 1 meter long, 3 feet long crystals that are on up there too. So it was really poised to be one of the most awesome extractions of our times. And unfortunately, because of lack of supervision, we lost the ability to do the recovery in both caves.
Amazing. John, I know that we're kind of starting to run out of time a little bit, but there are a few more things I want to talk about. So the show may end up going a little bit long. I hope the people are okay with it. But going from Mexico with the colorless gypsum to the land down under, the crocolites. Tell us about this.
Oh, man, this is the experience that is at the very apex of everything that I've been able to do. I was very fortunate back in 2011 to have Adam Wright, the leader of the group that is the owner of the Adelaide mine in Tasmania, Australia. Adam came on over to me, another fellow dealer. We've been talking there at the Tucson show for years. Adam was right at the point where they'd hit into a monster, what appeared to be a monster crocodile pocket. Now, the pocket ended up by being over 40 feet long and about 35 feet tall. It took us over 2 years to recover all the specimens from it. And if there's one word that I use to describe my collecting there, it's desecration. This was one of the most beautiful things that I'd ever seen. I would have loved to have seen this made into a tourist walkway where the tourists could come and walk along that 40-foot wall of the crocodiles and get an exposure to the geology of their country. And it was really, it was just so phenomenal. It was something that I wanted to share with everyone. And so the best way that I could think to do that was by writing up the experiences that I've had. But this was the ultimate. We ended up by recovering, 2 5-foot plates of crocodile, a 4-foot plate, which was the original photograph that you just shared, and then probably about 9 to a dozen 3-foot plates. And how we did that is I'm standing behind the vein. I've opened up a room, if you will, behind the vein to where the vein is sitting up vertically in the wall of the room. And then what I did is I started to section and then drop the pieces down. So this is the very first plate. It was about 4 feet long by 2 feet wide. We've dropped it down onto the white cradle that you can see down in the bottom of the photograph. And then we pulled it out from the pocket. This plate was actually so big that we had to widen the drift. It took about a week and a half of work to widen the tunnel so that we could actually get the crystal pocket out. So we took out this plate first, and then right across from my head, we took on out that next plate, and we just sectioned it down and brought out pieces that were as large as we could handle but were still manageable enough to be able to get them out of the mine and back across the island to Adam so that he could do the prep on them. Fantastic.
Now, John, I was lucky enough to be down there filming while you were extracting, and so I ended up making a film for Adam. There was one segment from it that I posted on YouTube that was you and Bruce Stark pulling out a nice plate. I'm going to play it here, but I'm not going to just let it roll. I'm going to kind of quickly skim through it because it's an 8-minute clip. Eloise is going to paste that URL into the chat window, so anyone who wants to see it later, you can go back and watch it. But let's go ahead and roll that video here.
Well, the floor is a little bit down.
So this was a piece where we had this kind of croak white rose sticking out, and it was up in the ceiling, and you can see it right there. You are to the left, and Bruce Stark is to the right. And when you watch this video, it is actually quite incredible.
Can we get enough
It's a non-stop dialogue between John and Bruce as they're trying to figure out how to pull this plate out without damaging it, without letting it just drop onto the ground. They're checking it. It's really a great example of a team working together because that line of communication was open. And going back to a safety issue, Bruce is wearing these mesh glasses because those croak white crystals just would come sprinkling down, and that was a good way to keep it out of your eyes and not like a plastic or a glass shield which would fog up in the high humidity under there. There's John being very dramatic. The one thing I loved about this, John, is it took us a while and you guys were getting tired. And rather than pushing the issue, you guys called it and you said, let's come back, let's sleep on this. And the next day you guys come back, you had time to think about it, you had time to rest yourselves. So again, it's about safety, it's about the best way to pull out this plate. And I think right about here is when it comes out. I'm going to turn the audio on.
Oh, this is fighting me.
Let me speed it up just a bit. And they're using a hydraulic car jack here to kind of...
You want to get the jack?
Yeah.
Okay, coming down.
The jack's not moving.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, good job.
Brilliant.
That's the one we want.
Wait.
And so let me
Nice.
just continue scrolling through it. The rest of it is you just walking it out, but that's what it looks like in the sunlight.
The thing I remember from that video is as we were walking out of the tunnel, taking the place to the shed, you kept on telling me, John, stop smiling. I was so pleased as punch, but like you brought up, Brian, I think really the magic of that video is showing the communication that happened. Out of any person that I've worked with before or since, working with Bruce was the finest cooperative effort that I have ever had. He knew what I was doing. I knew what he was doing. And more importantly, we were able to communicate that back and forth to each other in a way that we could understand, even during extremely stressful situations like an extraction. And I think it's also a valid point there to also bring up the idea of leaving the crystal pocket and coming back the next day. You know, I reach a point where I feel like I'm forcing the issue.
Right.
And at that point, then I'm not doing my best. There's a clash between me and the rock. And I need to back away and let the rock recover, let me recover to the point where we can come in with that fresh perspective. And rather than push a scenario to what would undoubtedly be an unsatisfying conclusion, we can go ahead, take the time, talk it on out with each other. And by the time we were done, that was a perfect extraction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'm almost more impressed at the communication that was going on versus the actual piece coming out. It was so just Perfect. You guys were in sync. And for any of you who haven't watched that video, again, the link is in the chat for the YouTube video of the recording of this session. I'll put the URL at the bottom of the screen. But watch that and listen to the two of them talk during that extraction.
Yeah.
And it gives you a great example of how important communication is. John, we are now at the 1 hour point. I've got, I think, two more things I want to talk about. So let's go through this a little bit quickly. You have a claim called the Rat's Nest, and recently you were there doing some new extraction. So talk to us about this.
This was the most phenomenal mining operation that we have ever conducted. The Rat's Nest claim was found about 1998 by Lanny Ream, following a lead given to him from another collector who remembered it vaguely being somewhere in this region. And so for 6 years, Lanny searched on out the deposit, and he found this one along the way. And Lanny enjoys prospecting where I enjoy mining. So I went ahead, I purchased the claim from him. We've conducted, probably about a half a dozen mining operations since 2000 when I took control. And this mining that we did last year, 2022, this is the biggest fine pocket that we have ever seen from the deposit. And basically it took everything going wrong to have everything go right. I've got 2 layers of sedimentary rock that bracket my igneous rock. And from underneath, the sedimentary rock has bulged up, and it's actually cut my 25-foot flow down to about 3 feet. So where the gas pockets came up to being abreast of this bulge, all the gas pockets started mingling and they started joining together. So we hit a zone where we were pulling out 2, 3, 4, up to this pocket, the main chamber being about 5 feet, but there was a stringer that went off for another 5 feet. So this was a 10-foot pocket. It has produced the finest specimens that we've ever seen from Rat's Nest. This pocket produced calcite, stilbite, heulandite, and unbelievable mortonites came from this pocket.
And that is you standing next to an exposure. Here is an example of some of the tools that you use to crack into some of these bubbles, some of these geodes.
Yeah, this was a little bit too small of a rotary hammer drill here. We could have stepped on up and used demo hammers for some of the rock removal that we did. What I actually did on that pocket was pedestal it. So I dug the back wall out, I dug the side walls out, and I left this thing pedestaled on a little stump of ground. And by doing that, we were able to have no pressure coming onto the sides of it that it would influence the breakage of it. And I use this rotary hammer drill to go ahead and remove all that rock. This is the main unit that we use other than the excavator to actually expose and get into these crystal pockets to where we can work them.
And I'm going to pull up a picture of you actually holding one of the great pieces. I mean, I love this photograph.
It's just phenomenal. This is right there coming abreast of that bulge. The pockets just started getting bigger and bigger. This is about 1 foot in diameter, maybe about 10 inches, and it went into the rock about 7 inches. So it's a great piece. And what I do is I carve the rock out to give the illusion of a geode shape. Okay. And the pockets themselves, the white mineral mortonite is up to 70% silica. So it tightens down the rock very, very good. And the altered andesite around it, I'm able to peel that away. And that's how we give those rounded shapes that you'll see when I offer the material.
And look at that.
This is some of our production here. When we mine, we can end on up with, I think by the time we were done doing all the trimming, we ended up between about 3,000 and 4,000 pieces. They went up into specimens that were close. Well, the one big one's probably about 130 pounds, the one big specimen that we took out. So this is giving you an idea about what we find. These are all raw specimens set aside, waiting for the mining operation to finish. And then we come on in afterwards and we field trim things down to the point where they can be taken home.
So you have a very methodical process of extraction where you pull these out, set them aside, you open them up a little bit, but then you don't pack them right then and there. You wait till you're done digging and then you field dress them and then you take them out.
The only exception to that are these morganite specimens like you see here. These are crystals that are soft like fuzz. And you can actually, on the edges of the crystal plate, you can actually pet the crystals and they'll flex and move. So as delicate, where the natural lights and the crocoite were brittle, this is soft like fuzz. And so the only specimens that we dealt with immediately were these morganite specimens. And as soon as they were collected, they were boxed up and taken away from the dust that's being blown all throughout the deposit.
Sure. Okay.
And then we have to come on in and we remove, I see there's a little chunk of dirt there in the center of the plate. I'll come on in, and what I do is I actually vacuum out each individual speck of dust going to 6 power. So there's good detail there. And when these plates are done, they're pristine, fuzzy white, and just so gorgeous, they take your breath away. And this was a really nice cabinet-sized specimen, fresh from the pocket.
Well, I'm going to show a video now of of you and let's just say a helper actually pulling out one of the specimens.
You grab it right here and just kind of pull it out to you, okay? Did you get it? First one ever to do this. None of us has even seen it before. You're doing good. Still a little bit tough. Screwdriver, please, my friend. Yep, that'll work. All right, sweet, here. Let's try this a little bit. Well, look here. Okay. There. Now pry towards me. Oh, here, that's a good idea. You go ahead and grab the rock and I'll do it. That's smart. You are really a smart girl. Okay, use both hands. Hold it real solid. And now when you got here, grab it real tight. And then I'm going to have you turn it over and we'll see what you just found. Turn all the way over. Yep, turn all the way over.
Oh, goodness.
Look at that. You think it's time? That's a beautiful one.
John, absolutely superb. Tell us about this beautiful young lady.
Oh, well, Henley came on out with her parents. Henley's dad is the son of my excavator operator on out there, Brett Getty, a wonderful man that I've worked with since 2000. And Brett had his son come on out and brought little Henley. And at that point, I told everybody we weren't going to mine anymore. We were going to have fun. And so Henley and we went on out and we did some collecting. This was one of the pockets. We were able to get her into several of the pockets and have her pull her out her own crystal plates. And I just found out when I sent the announcement to them that Henley has now decided not to be a cosmologist. She's actually going to pursue becoming a geologist now.
We got another one.
We got it, and Henley, if you're listening, darling, I want you to know it was so great to work with you. I look forward to seeing you and your family when we come on down there again. And I'm really happy to make you a part of this presentation. I'm really glad that you got to share in that experience.
That is absolutely beautiful. Now, John, another thing, and this is going to be the final topic we're going to touch on. Another
Sure.
thing I find so incredibly unique and wonderful about you is your dedication to passing on the knowledge and the passion to the next generation. I think this video that we just saw was a great example of that, but you actually probably do more presentations to kids than anyone else that I know of. Tell us about how you got started in that and what you do for these kids.
Oh, thanks, Brian. This is me at my very best when I get to share. I started back in 1997 working in the Olympic National Park. There's essentially an environmental summer camp there. It was called Olympic Park Institute. Now it's under Nature Bridge. You guys can look them up on the net. They have a number of different campuses that they invite school groups on out to. And if they do an earth sciences curriculum, I'll come on in and I do my geology rocks talk. And you'll notice I'm wearing the same T-shirt there that I'm wearing in the presentation today. And I just really enjoy it. Working with the kids. For the most part, I don't like adults. They've already made up their minds. They've already decided what their worlds are, where a kid is waiting to be fascinated and is waiting to be exposed. And that's what I get to do in the presentations, is I get to introduce them to this wonderful world that surrounds every one of them, wherever they live, and let them know that they can be a part of that discovery process. And I've been doing this since 97, a little over 35,000 kids now, I think I put through my program.
35,000 kids.
Yeah, it's
I want
awesome.
everyone to stop for one moment and think about that number. 35,000 kids you've directly addressed through your presentations on minerals, geology, and passion for the earth. If I were wearing a hat, I'd take it off to you, my friend.
Hey, thanks. Every one of us has a way that we can share. And when you share something that fuels you, something that you're passionate about, something that inspires you with others, your enthusiasm comes out in spades. And I think as kids, kids need to see enthusiasm. I've asked people, what is the number one way that a kid sees passion? Sadly, it's anger.
Yep.
And I want to rewrite that and have them see somebody who's actually older than their grandparents now. Thank you. I can go on up there and, I pop and I squeak and I laugh and I giggle and I'm running back and forth the whole presentation long. And it's so satisfying to send these kids out the door, to watch them as the lesson clicks. You can see it going off in their faces as they start to retain rather than just be there skirting across the surface of it. And that's when the magic really happens. I've heard of several kids now on top of Henley who have decided to pursue a geology career because of these talks. And I just think that exposure is so important to kids that we need to let them know that this is a part of their world if they're just willing to take the time and go on out and explore it.
Absolutely. And you do a great job with your passion, but you also do something that's so subtle, but so just elemental in the sense that during your presentations, you talk directly to the kids. During your examples, you get down on the level of the kids, so you're looking at them eye to eye. This is such a critical thing, so they are completely syncing with you, and you are really, honestly, truly speaking to them, not at them.
Thank you, and I agree. This is the key, is not talking down the snoot of my nose to these kids, but actually being one-on-one with them. And when you can, like I say, when you make that light bulb go off in these kids, it fulfills me in a way that I don't get to experience under normal circumstances. And it just lets me know that my place here on earth is a good place and that I can share and inspire others. And I think that's a magic that most of us, we lose along the way, thinking that we don't have anything to share when it's the exact opposite.
That's
You
true.
put yourself out there, and the rewards I get are not monetary. The rewards I get are smiles.
Yep.
And it fulfills me in a way that I'm just so fortunate that I found. And I encourage everybody, because everybody has something that they can share. And give of yourself a little bit, and you'll find that you receive back tenfold. It is the absolute truth. Absolutely.
100%. I appreciate you, John. John, we're going to switch to our quickfire 5 question segment. But before we do, I said the kids was going to be the last thing, but I lied, because there's one final thing I want you to talk about as I get the quickfire 5 questions ready. What a whale! I thought we were talking about rocks.
Well, rocks contain the whale, right? This is definitely the most awesome discovery that I've ever made. I made this here in Clallam County, Washington, where I live. We had an operating quarry that was producing clay for the manufacturing of Portland cement. And inside of these clay beds, we would find fossils. Well, I went down there one day, and the ripper blades pulled behind the back of the dozer actually went right through the skull of this fossil whale. And that very first day that I found the whale bones and started to identify the animal that I'd found, we recovered about 1,000 pounds of bones. I should say I recovered. I was there by myself. Recovered about 1,000 pounds of bone, and then called in the Burke Museum, which is our Washington State Natural History Museum, and had them come on out with the clout to be able to work with a mining company. The whale, here was the skull, and the body kind of dipped down on in. So we had some clay blocks that needed to be removed in order to get the last half of the body. The whale is about 18 feet long. It is a brand new genus and species. Its name is Sitzquake cornisharum. It is the second fossil species that I've had named after me now. I've also got a fossil crab, Athenognanthus cornisharum, that has also been named after me. And we donated these to the museum so that they could be put out on public display. No monetary kickback. We donated them because I wanted everybody to see what they can find if they go out and look. So this is the beginning of baleen evolution, in that my whale was a baleen feeder, but it still had residual non-functioning teeth, showing
Wow.
that transition from a toothed animal into a baleen feeder. And this is where the whale fossils that we're finding out here are so unique and important, because we're showing that evolutionary shift from meat into plankton. And I wanted to share a piece here. This weighs about 35 pounds. This is one of the new whale skulls that I found. What we're looking at here, this is the brow, the top of the skull. These are the eye sockets going into the skull. So I've missed a section of the front here, but I've got the back of the brain case. I've got the ear bones. And this is what a new skull can look like as an example of how a find is made in the field. It doesn't look like that was finally on display, but this is actually what we can find in the field. This is one of the ear bones right here, the very dark, dense. And then when you see very complicated bones like you see up here, these are showing that this is a skull. So this could actually and will likely be a brand new species. And this is what they look like when we actually find them in the field more often than not.
That is amazing. And I love the fact I didn't know that this was a transitory whale. In the cetacean order, you've got the toothed whales like the sperm whales and the killer whales actually in the dolphin family. And then you have all the baleen whales. And so this is showing that the toothed whales evolved prior to the baleen whales, which fascinating. Way to go.
Yeah,
John.
the teeth were still there in the jaw. They were just completely non-functional now.
Amazing. John, we're going to jump into our Quickfire 5 segment. This is where I've got 5 questions for you. Each question has 2 answers. You're going to tell me which one you resonate with most. All of your answers are correct. All the viewers have already answered, so we're going to see how well they predicted what you're going to choose. Do you understand?
boy.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Question number 1. When you're not collecting, what do you like to do most? Drying fruit or watching sports?
Oh, yeah, we're drying fruit there. Yep. I'm a fruit gleaner, I admit it.
How much fruit do you glean every year?
The most we've ever done dehydrating fruit is 500 pounds or 500 gallons rather of raw fruit that we actually dehydrate. So we do cherries, plums, prunes, apples, pears. Don't do blackberries because then you just end up with a wad of seeds.
Yep.
Yeah, a little bit of advice there, but I love gathering the fruit. It's a nice physical activity. Any fruit that we don't use, we donate to the food banks locally.
Absolutely. And if you're lucky enough to go visit John at Denver or at Tucson, and if he has a little packet of fruit, you're going to absolutely love it. He's happy to share it with you. Question number 2, favorite extracurricular activity, flipping burgers or flipping trucks?
Since I've not ever flipped a burger and I've definitely flipped a truck on Peterson Mountain in Nevada, I'd have to say flip a truck.
All right. Question number 3, taste in music, country music or heavy metal?
Oh, definitely the heaviest heavy metal you can find on out there. I'm not a rapper, I'm a rocker.
You are not a little bit country. You are way too much rock and roll. Question number 4, favorite mineral species, quartz or tourmaline?
Wow. Typically, I answer that with the one I can collect. But yeah, I'd say tourmaline. Some of the tourmaline mining that I've been able to do has been some of the most exciting and satisfying mining that I've ever done. There's a weight that when you put a freshly collected tourmaline in your hand, there's a comforting weight to it that just makes your heart swell. Awesome. Tourmaline.
Okay. Final question, and this is the real tough one. Are you ready?
Oh, boy.
Favorite herb, basil or rosemary?
Well, since Rosemary's my girl, I'm going to have to say rosemary. I'm absolutely blessed to have her in my life, and definitely rosemary. She's the best thing out there.
I'm sorry to say, but she is my favorite part of you.
Yep, I can agree.
All right, Eloise, are you ready with the viewers' answers?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Question number 1, when not collecting, drying fruit or watching sports? John went with drying fruit. What did our viewers say?
Drying fruits, they did well on that one, and I agree. John's dried fruits are amazing. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Question number 2, favorite extracurricular, flipping burgers or flipping trucks? John obviously went with flipping trucks. What did our viewers say?
They went for flipping burgers, I guess, like not a lot of people are used to flipping trucks around. So yeah.
All right. There's another story to have John tell you when you meet up with him at one of the shows. Taste in music, country or heavy metal? John went with heavy metal. What did our viewers say?
They don't know they're John enough. They went for country music.
Oh.
Yeah, no, honestly, John, I was trying to think of like what, of course, heavy metal was going to be the proper answer, but I was trying to think of what other genre. And I figured you come off as so kind of calm and peaceful and friendly that most people would go for country if I put that in there. And I was personally shocked. I had known you for years. When I was with you in Tasmania, I listened to the music that you were listening to, and my eyes bulged, man. That was incredible. Okay, favorite mineral species, quartz or tourmaline? John went with tourmaline. What did our viewers say?
Well, they went with quartz, maybe because quartz is a mineral species and not tourmaline.
Ooh, that's right. That's right.
Oh,
it's a family.
Brian
And,
just got
and certainly
spanked.
some of the quartz deposits we have here in Washington are utterly noteworthy. Twins, scepters, reverse scepters. We get a lot of nice quartz on out here in the Northwest. Yes, ma'am.
So they went with quartz, right?
Yes, so we can
Okay.
they were right. You know,
They were right.
for once,
all
for
right.
once,
My
viewers were
bad. My
right.
bad. I'll take the hit. And final question: favorite herb, basil or rosemary?
Yes,
Rosemary.
rosemary. Yes, indeed.
Okay.
And is Rosemary around? We saw her at the very beginning of the show, and then she went hiding. She went
Oh,
like behind the
she's
scenes.
in the other room here so that she can watch and giggle without me having to be distracted.
All right. So that's 2, maybe 3 out of 5. Okay. Well, at least we've learned more about John. Eloise, do we have any questions from the viewers in the Q&A section?
You know, I was surprised that a lot of people were asking questions beforehand, and most of them got answered during the show. I guess you got a lot of people who know you already. I know that Barbara was asking you about crocoite. We had questions about the rust nest, but that was answered already. The zeolite locality as well. So a lot of questions were answered throughout the show. So there's more maybe by Beatrice. Do you have any extractions in the new mineral exhibit of the Museum of Natural History in New York City? Because she's a member.
Yes, we do. Some of the hewlandite, mortonite specimens that we've collected are within that collection. Yep.
Okay, great. We have another question. What do you see as the greatest challenge facing younger mineral collectors?
Great question.
Access. Access is the number one thing. Since I've been, started at 29, I'm 61 now. Easily half of the collecting area that had been opened is now shut down. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the collecting opportunities that we had as older collectors are not present now for the newer collectors. And that's a real shame. When I go on out and I tell the kids to go down to the beach to collect fossils, I'm essentially telling them to become little felons. And it's not right that we should limit our access to scientific materials to help us understand the world that is around us. So I think it's really important, any type of way that we can approach young people to where they can understand and take in the lesson. I think that's really what needs to be done. But access is the number one limitation that I see struggling new collectors to overcome.
Yeah. Thanks for the question and thanks for the answer. Really good one. Yes. Dick Stada had an interesting question as well. He's saying the Western states have had numerous forest fires over the last few years. Has there been mineral exploration in the burned out areas? And has any new minerals been discovered?
Really great question. We have been dealing with forest fires issues here in the West. And there are definitely fires that have happened in regions and areas that are very mineral rich. And there are prospectors that are going on out that are covering some of these areas with the idea of finding exposures, particularly here in the Pacific Northwest, where the ground is so quickly covered in leaves and mosses and that type of a ground cover that we don't really get a surface expression of the geology very often. More often than not, it's buried underneath that vegetation. So when it's removed and then we can see the geology, one area is over in eastern Washington, an area called Leavenworth. There's a number of different pegmatites that were exposed from forest fires going through that area that yielded some very rich pockets with tourmalines. Don't know the species. Thank you for bringing that up about the family too of tourmaline. That was a good thing there, Eloise. And so we've got tourmalines. We pulled on out some clevelandite, some albite, and some quartz also out of these pockets directly found after forest fire activity. Yep.
Interesting. Interesting. Maybe a related question by Kathy Kreider. Does exposure to air affect the new specimens?
Dependent upon what the species are, just like exposure to air causes us to weather too, the minerals will also weather when they're exposed. And we have, as an example, a zeolite species called lamentite, that as soon as the lamentite is exposed to the atmosphere, it will actually start to release the water in its structure, and a solid crystal that could cut your flesh turns into powder. So air does definitely play. The great oxidation event, obviously, is something that is so important. So air does become both a positive and a negative, because, of course, when we expose something to air, now we have the potential to find it. When it's still locked away in the rock, we really need to bring our prospecting skills on out to try to read the rock to understand if there's the potentials of pockets. So by having them exposed, we get to collect them, which is a very positive thing. But yes, becoming exposed can cause the weathering to affect those crystals to the point where they're destroyed for us as collectibles.
Mm-mm. All right, moving on to the next question by Patrick Roycroft. I guess you will have a lot of information probably available on that kind of related subjects. So how exactly do you pack those mordanite for, say, international shipping so that they arrive in perfect condition?
All right. On Blue Cap Productions on YouTube, if you click the playlist, you'll find that I have a playlist Brian has been kind to host for me. It's got 5 or 6 videos on it. And one of those videos there shows aluminum foil as a wrapping technique that I've used. And what I would consider passing on is having the gentleman watch that video to see how we can protect these very fragile things. I have shipped mordanites as far away as Finland, above the what is it, the ice circle or the Arctic Circle?
Arctic Circle.
Yeah, and we've actually shipped them up there for the Geologic Survey, and they've made it safe. So trying to come up with a technique to preserve these things as they're in shipment and secure them, aluminum foil has really been the ace material for me to use.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
Brian, maybe we can find the link and send the link in the chat, or maybe on Facebook later. I don't know what's the best option here. What I maybe carry on with a question. Okay,
I'll look up the link if you keep him talking.
Yes, excellent.
Yeah, and that link also to the playlist for those of you who would like to pursue the crocoite and learn more. There's an excellent presentation I gave called Down and Dirty, where we go crocoite mining. I've actually got a film in there where we're going to film on up. We'll do an extraction and then film up into the crystal void, and you can see what these things look like before they were recovered. And then there's also another one called Blistered Fingers there, which is a field collecting using hand tools videos so that people can learn about the different uses of these tools and see some of the things that we've been able to recover.
Excellent. So that answers a question then that I have in the chat as well. So that's perfect. So I move to Anna Papadopoulos' question. She's asking, what would you recommend as a novice first-time field collector?
I'd recommend that you go to a club and find other individuals that share your passion. Now, clubs are great places to go for your enthusiasm to die also, because, you know, people are very interested in talking about what they want to talk about and are much less interested in talking about what you may want to talk about. So find those individuals within the group, those people that have spent time in the field. Try to learn from them. Don't be greedy. Be thankful of everything that they share with you, because you'll be able to take that time garnered experience and move it on into your own collecting. And by having that peer to bounce things off of, I think is always a good idea. I don't necessarily follow the advice given to me by my peers, but I always take the time to consider it as I'm moving forward. And I think that's an awesome resource to have, is these people who are willing to help us, who want to see us succeed in life and get to share a little bit in those experiences because of our good fortunes.
Excellent advice. Thanks. Two last questions. Okay, Mike Sanders, what is the age of the whale fossil that we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, about 26.5 million years, according to magnetic stratigraphy work that we've done down there along the Strait of Juan de Fuca to age the rocks. So this is mid-Oligocene is what we're dealing with on out here. And so many of the vertebrate fossils that we find out here are brand new. One of the other recent ones I collected was a 6-foot tall, 200 plus pound bird, the largest bird in the Western Hemisphere. This was found also while I'm out there walking. So it's not just marine. We are finding marine animals predominantly, but we're also finding the animals that existed along the shorelines, and we're working in cooperation with that marine environment for their own needs. And it just goes to show you, if you go out and look, you're going to find something a lot better than sitting in front of your TV and finding a commercial in 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. So get outside if you can. Just enjoy the perfect, beautiful world that surrounds us.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, the last question is by Alan Hart. He's asking, Sepultura or Slipknot?
Oh boy. You know, I would probably go with Sepultura, although I find them both to be very mellow.
Yeah.
Mellow for you. It's like kiddie time music to me. Right. So I need something that's got more meat and potatoes. Alan, do me a favor, Alan, and try Tony Danza Tap Dance Extravaganza, and you'll see what I listen to. Sorry, everybody who's learned too much about me now.
I am so glad I'm not the only one who got spanked on the show. Al, you too, brother.
So Alan is saying that he will look into those books. Perfect. And that's it, basically. So thank you very much for taking the time to answer all those questions and more. Thanks for being with us today. And I will definitely see you not in Denver, but hopefully in Tucson next year.
Good. We'll look forward to that. And I really do. I want to thank you all as hosts. And I want to thank the viewing audience for taking the time out of your day today to sit on in. This place on this program could be filled by you too. Share what you have, your knowledge, your passion, and express that so that others can also share in that. We got one round through here on life. Let's go ahead and shake it on up a little bit and cast a couple of stones, and we'll see what we can find. So everybody get outside, have a great day. Turn off your TVs after this. Go have a great day.
Well, John, I think you saw probably all the hearts and all the thumbs ups and all the little emojis that we had running. So I don't have to tell you how many great things we had from the people looking and viewing. A lot of people interacting as well in the chat. So, like these emojis are perfect. They say everything.
You're all the best. Thank you all so much. It's been really a great afternoon here to spend some time with you. I look forward to seeing you all at the shows. And hey, if I can help, send me an email or something. I'll try to do my best for you folks who are trying to get out in the field. For those of you who maybe would like to start sharing presentations of your own, if there's any thing that I can help with, please let me know. And I'll do my very best for you guys, because you're all worth it. And it's an awesome thing to share with people.
Well, Absolutely. Thank you very much, John.
John, thank you so much for being on the show and just revving us all up with this positive energy that you do. So appreciate it. I appreciate you. Love you. Give my hugs to Rosemary. Everyone watching, be good. We'll see you next month. Cheers.
Love to everybody. Thanks for checking in.